No matter what they want to say culturally or in the school system or on social media, boys and girls are different. So basically, nice guys are chameleons. And even while we might do nice things for other people, there's strings attached. I mean,
And
and
off,
I was a marriage therapist for over 25 years. I've listened to plenty of complaints in a relationship. And if you don't like your partner's wants and needs, get the fuck away from them. Why would we be married to somebody that we're disrespectful of what they want? Like,
mm, I,
unfortunately, a lot of men learn, their sexual expectations come from watching porn. And then they
yeah,
want their partner to act like a porn star. Number one, how do you, each one need to do a better job of getting their own bucket filled without being dependent on the other? And are they a good match? If you don't want to help meet your wife's needs, well, maybe you're not a good match. If your wife does not want to help you get your needs met, maybe you're not a good match.
absolutely. What about those nice guys that put their partner on the pedestal? Ironically, it sort of kills desire in the long run, but others sort of chase women who treat them badly. Why do these patterns happen, and how can a nice guy break free from this pattern?
I've never been quite this bold on a podcast before and saying it like that. But think about it. Here's the deal.
Dr. Robert Glover, what's wrong with being a nice guy?
What's wrong with being a nice guy? By the way, I want to say you and I had a nice chat before we started recording, and come to find out, you used to live where I live, and we probably were neighbors for a little while. So now that you live in
Probably.
Finland, it's kind of a small world. So what's wrong with
Absolutely.
being a nice guy? That's a good question because we would think that a nice guy, that's a good thing. And I thought that for a long time. I thought, well, I'm a nice guy. I'm different from my father. I'm different than the bad men I hear women complain about. That should make me a good guy and make me lovable. And that should help me get my needs and my wants met. But the problem is with nice guys is we're trying to do two things that can lead to us not being so nice. The first thing that we're trying to do is typically to become what we think other people want us to be. So if I get a nice head nod from you there, okay, I did that right. He approved of it, so I'll keep doing more of that. The second thing that nice guys do is they try to hide anything about them that might get a negative reaction. So if I said something and you kind of looked funny or crossed your arms, like, oh, I won't say that again. I won't go there again. So the core problem underneath all of that is because a nice guy doesn't believe he's okay just as he is. Now, he might not walk around thinking that, but that's down at the core of the nice guy's psyche. I'm not okay just as I am. I have to become what I think other people want me to be, hide anything that might get a negative reaction. And the problem with that is we're inauthentic. We're not truly ourselves, which means we might say anything to get approval. We'll avoid anything. We'll hide things from people. We'll out and out lie, distort the truth. There's no real us there. So add to that we're not particularly honest or authentic, which sounds kind of contradictory because, when I said I'm a nice guy, I don't think I realized back 30 years ago how much I lied about almost everything. Because I didn't think, well, I don't make up stuff. I don't tell stories. But I realized I have a lie coach in my head. And that coach would talk to me all the time. Well, tell it this way, or leave that part out, or just don't bring that up, or misdirect their attention, or deny that, but, or blame them. That coach would just be, and I started listening to that lie coach and realized, wait a minute, I'm thinking all the time, how do I present the story? How do I avoid conflict? How do I get approval? How do I avoid disapproval? Now, add to that I'm not particularly honest or authentic. If I don't ask for what I want, I'm going to then have to try to manipulate people to try to just read my mind and give to me. And that's where something I call covert contracts come in. And I talk about those in No More Mr. Nice Guy. So a covert contract is I'm giving to get, but you don't know about the contract. And when you don't keep your end of it, according to me, I'm often resentful, frustrated, I'd be really pissed off at you, but I won't come out and tell you that usually. I'll usually be passive aggressive. I'll be indirect. I'll take a poke at you. I'll jab at you. I'll quit calling you. I'll ghost you because I'm mad at you, but I don't tell you that. And all the while, I didn't ask you for what I wanted in the first place. So because of that, having a difficulty asking for what we want, having a difficulty being receptive when people try to give to us, we're often resentful and frustrated, but completely unaware how frustrated and resentful we are. I remember I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy while I was married to my second wife. And she would call these blowups that I might have when I that frustration and resentment would blow up. She'd call them victim pukes. And something I'd be, just rehearsing this thing I'm going to say because I'm so pissed off because, she doesn't want to have sex anymore, or, she did this or won't do that. And then when I'd finally blow up later, she'd say, "How long had that been on your mind?" And I'd go, "I don't know, 6 months maybe." I'd been ruminating and rehearsing what I wanted to say about it. And she said, "Did you ever think to just tell me about it?" I go, "No, not really. Didn't even cross my mind. And if it did, my thought was, well, if I tell you, you'll get mad at me. And I don't want you mad at me." So then I would blow up in a not very nice way and then try to make it all better again because I don't want anybody upset at me. So basically, nice guys are chameleons. And even while we might do nice things for other people, there's strings attached. And often when we don't get our expectations met, we're anything but nice to the people we've been giving to. So there's a whole bag of stuff in there that makes us often not very nice.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think after I read your book, I started getting all these green lights. And I guess I sort of came to the realization that, hey, I'm a nice guy. There's a lot of these things that I can see in myself that I perhaps before I didn't put a name to it until I read your book. But something that allowed me to understand it is what are the origins of the nice guy? From your book, you sort of touched base a little bit about what were the origins and what is the historical context of how nice guys have been changing over history. So could you explain just a little bit more as to what are the origins of nice guy? How is it that a nice guy is born?
Well, probably for any number of us, if somebody's listening to this and they go, "Well, yeah, that's me. I avoid conflict. Yeah, I give to get. Yeah, I try to keep the peace. Yeah, I don't always tell the truth. Yeah, I hide my feelings and wants." It could be that a good part of that is our natural temperament, that we were born that way. I think I was born a pretty easygoing, resilient, go along to get along kind of kid. My my mother would at times tell women I was dating when I was an adult. My mother would say, "Bobby never did like conflict." And I'm thinking, well, thanks, Mom. And number two, yeah, who likes conflict? But
Nobody
some people
does.
do. Some people do. I mean, the women I marry seem to like conflict. So, I tell my wife all the time, she's Mexican, like you. And I tell her, you love to fight. I say Mexicans love to argue because it's free. And so, she likes to have a good argument. Me, it's kind of like, can we just like sit down and talk about this and be calm and rational and resolve it and get back to good and move on? Why do we have to keep it in, withdraw, fight about it, get angry? Why can't we just talk about it? That's me. That's who I am. I don't like conflict. I like to get problems resolved. If somebody says, "Hey, let's go do this," I go, "Oh yeah, sure." If somebody says, "What do you want to eat tonight?" Well, I might have a thought about it, but if they say, "Well, let's do that," yeah, let's go do that. I'm pretty easygoing in that way. Now, if you actually ask the people closest to me, they might say I'm pretty controlling. My wife calls me Mr. Control sometimes, Mr. Control, and I go, "No, it's Doctor Control." So make sure you get that right. Um, so I'm pretty easygoing. So I think a lot of nice guys maybe are born with that temperament of being pretty easygoing. Now, yeah, add to that, there's a lot of different things that can get brought into the mix. In No More Mr. Nice Guy, I wrote the book, but finished writing it about 25 years ago. And back then, I saw influences of more and more fathers out of the home, so boys being raised more and more by mothers, an educational system that was geared more towards, girls succeeding than boys succeeding, angry feminism of the 60s and 70s. I grew up during that. I heard messages like every man's a rapist and erection's a sign of aggression. Hearing women complain about all the jerks that only want one thing, i.e., sex. And I didn't want to be that guy. I think the Vietnam War had a big influence on separating young men from their fathers as well, kind of a generational divide. But what's interesting now, I think there's even additional factors that probably play in that didn't really exist even when I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy 25 years ago. I think you can add Another thing where I talk to a lot of young men now, maybe millennials or Gen Z, and rather them saying that their father wasn't there or their father was a jerk, like a lot of guys in my generation, they say their father was a nice guy. And I think about it. My son's millennial. He's 39, and he grew up with a nice guy father, me.
Mm.
And so a lot of young men say the only thing their dad taught them was how not to piss off their mother, because that's what their dads were trying to do, is not piss off the son's mother. And so I think there's a lot of nice guy dads raising their sons to be nice guys. Add into that the educational system, I think, has gone even further and further towards gearing towards girls and not boys. And even in there, now this meme of toxic masculinity, I've had parents tell me their 7-year-old boy comes home from school and says, Mommy, Daddy, what's toxic masculinity? Am I bad because I'm a boy? So that's in the school systems. Boys get punished more in school systems than girls do. They get kicked out. They drop out more than girls. And then add to that, I would say social media, that I think social media has a big feminizing effect on young men. You know, if you're just chasing likes and subscriptions and approval and followers, that's all feminine. That's external validation. The masculine part of ourselves is internally validated through masterful action. But nowadays, a lot of young men, everything's pushed to them. You know, the social media is pushed to them, their Netflix is pushed to them, their porn is pushed to them, even Uber Eats pushes their food to them. They don't actually have to go do anything masterfully. And so a lot of them don't have any internal sense of an internal validation that comes through being initiated and being able to have act masterfully. So I think even social media has created a lot more nice guys. It's domesticated young men even more than they were in my generation. So I think there's a lot of factors that play into it. And nowadays, I think I would say I'd point it mostly to social media and that whole meme of toxic masculinity saying everything men do is bad. And so, you know, if a guy's already oriented towards being a nice guy, I'll have guys ask me, young men, maybe 18, 20 years old, and they'll ask me, how should I let a girl know I like her? You know, should I tell her? Should I hold her hand? Should I try to kiss her? Should I try? And knowing if I try to do anything, she may accuse me of violating her. She may write something about it on social media. And I can understand why boys would become a lot more passive in a lot of ways, but especially around women, if they know that anything they do might get called out. They might get, you know, shit posted on social media, might get canceled, might get
Me
accused
too.
of things. So just a lot of young men just, hey, I'll just stay home and play World of Warcraft or Grand Theft Auto and surf the internet and build my click funnel and try to become an internet influencer. But most of them don't get out and truly challenge themselves. And that's where I think a big piece is missing for a lot of men culturally is a lack of masculine initiation to teach us how to face our fears, to get out of our comfort zone and do things masterfully. So that's a lot of answers to your question, but I think a lot of things have contributed to it and probably continue to contribute to it.
Yeah, I can see that definitely happening. Now, something that I've been thinking a lot about is, as I mentioned to you, I have two kids. One of them is a girl, one of them is a boy. So a lot of the questions that I have is for my little boy is, okay, how can I raise a little boy who is confident, who can be an unapologetical man without having to apologize why he is a man and believe in himself? And the same thing goes for the girl. I think a lot about these things. And if I think of my little boy, for example, I think, okay, what are the things that I need to do as a father so that he can become a successful young man who is productive, who is confident, who is secure of himself, and who can also help people around him. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is, okay, how much of a role of parenting goes into not creating nice guys, because then eventually once they reach a certain age, like you mentioned, some of the things that social media seems to be uh sort of exemplifying the nice guy syndrome, if we want to call it that, because of all this, toxic shaming, toxic masculinity and all those things. So if we want to take it back a little bit farther down to the kids, what are some of the things that, for example, nice guy fathers or parents are doing that it's creating the starting point of a future nice guy?
You know, yeah, we could come at this from a lot of ways. One of the things I used to tell parents, because my training's in marriage and family therapy.
Mhm.
So, I've talked to a lot of parents about parenting. And one of the things I used to tell parents is the best thing a parent can do for their children is to love their partner. So for husbands to have, for moms and dads to have good relationships. Because when I listen to most nice guys, when I listen, as a therapist, when I listen to most people's stories, most people that end up in therapy don't report having seen a healthy, loving relationship between their parents. Either their parents were divorced, or maybe there's a step parent in there, or dad had his issues with, drugs or alcohol or abuse or philandering, or mom had her issues with depression or over control or working and never available. Uh, and usually there's not a lot of reports of seeing mom and dad being affectionate and loving and being good at resolving conflict. So I would start with that. Now, granted, not every home's going to have both parents. Sometimes things happen. But as much as possible, if the two parents have a loving, supportive relationship, even if they're not married to each other anymore, if they're still loving and supportive, I think they can do a good job of parenting. And so that's where I think it begins. If you and your partner can resolve conflict, genuinely love each other, are blessing each other's lives, helping fill each other's bucket up, you'll have plenty of overflow to give to your kids. Now, most of the research I've seen talks about how crucial fathers are for the developing identity of both boys and girls. That probably plays out in different ways for a boy and a girl. I think you're going to treat them fundamentally the same in some ways, but very different in other ways. Now, I've raised basically three families of kids. My son was born to my first wife. He's now, as I said, 39. My second wife had two kids that I raised, a boy and a girl. And now my third wife has two kids that I've been raising for about the last 8 years, a boy and a girl. And no matter what they want to say culturally or in the school system or on social media, boys and girls are different. Now, are there some similarities? Yeah, of course. But in general, boys and girls are wired differently. And that's okay. It's a good thing. And we can parent our boys and girls differently. We don't have to parent them the same. So like with your son, well, let me share one commonality and then let's talk about maybe differences. The commonality part, I in in when I married my wife, she's Mexican from the same city as you originally, and she didn't speak English, still speaks very little, so I learned Spanish. Now I'm still learning. I've been speaking it for several years now, but when my wife and kids are talking to each other, I don't understand half of what they say. Or when our Cuban house cleaner says something, I tell my wife, I don't understand anything Anna says. And my wife goes, I don't either, because she speaks Cuban, which is
Yeah.
technically Spanish. But so because I wasn't fluent in Spanish when I came into my stepkids' lives, I had to bring something else of value. I couldn't have long conversations with them. I couldn't, help them work out their problems, but I could do other things with them. And one was spend quality time with them. And that quality time, would often involve a lot of hugs, a lot of approval, a lot of telling them, I'm proud of them. And so, in a sense, my stepkids are the same age as my granddaughter, right? My stepkids now are 19 and 17. My granddaughter's 18. So I love all my stepkids like I do my granddaughter in a sense. I don't worry so much about, do I have to give them a lot of discipline or do I have to give them a lot of structure? Mainly, I give them a lot of hugs and a lot of words of affirmation. Now, one thing that I think my stepkids have liked is that for whatever reason, my second wife, third wife, tended when they disciplined the kids, kind of yelled a lot and used a lot of words and repeated themselves a lot of times. And I think the kids kind of like it when I discipline them. I just say, we're not going to do it that way. Here's the way we're going to do it. Understood? And they go, uh huh. Okay. I think they're kind of glad when I'm the one disciplining them. But I just keep it really to the point, very affirming, not scolding, not shaming. So basically, I try to build that foundation of love to where both of my kids, my stepkids, say in this current relationship and in previous marriage as well, know that they're loved. And really, you don't need a lot of words to do that, I've found out, but a lot of
Mm.
hugs and a lot of just words of compliments, go a long way. So kids seeing their parents love each other, the kids feeling loved unconditionally by their parents. And even if you have to correct them or discipline them, it's still done very lovingly. And they still know that they're loved, but they know that here's how we're going to need to do it different. Right. And there's consequences if they don't. But the consequences shouldn't be that they get yelled at a bunch or shamed a bunch. It should just be very clear, calm. Here's what's going to happen if you do that again. Okay. So there's that piece. Now, with your son, what I found is that boys need good chunks of quality time with their dads doing whatever dad is doing. Now, that could be a lot of different things. Back in the day, maybe dads worked on a car. And, it'd be good for the boy to be there helping dad to work on the car and the dad teaching him skills and giving him things to do that he can do at whatever age he's at, even if it's just handing a wrench or holding a light. Um, it might be building something. It might be um, going out with the dad's guy friends. Whenever I went out with my guy friends, I'd take my boys with me. If I was going to a baseball game with my guy friends, if I was going camping, if we're going fishing, I'd try to find ways to include my sons. And that, because boys need that masculine tribe, that masculine initiation, because boys just aren't around men all that much anymore. In school, it's mainly female teachers. Um, boys on the farm used to grow up with their uncles, their cousins, their grandpa. Now boys are growing up mainly in the nursery around women and girls. So the more you can get your son out with you, the better. If you're just going somewhere, if you're going, I don't know if they have Home Depot in Finland, but they've got them here. If you're going to the hardware store, if you're going anywhere, take your son with you. Tell him, come on, let's go. And, walk around. Because I found with raising my boys, often the only time they'll really tell you what's going on in their lives is riding in the car. Something about getting in the car, they'll just start opening up and chatting with you. So take your son with you as many places as you can go. Also, I would say, is learn to speak your son's language, in not so much the verbal language, but what interests your sons. Is he into, comics? Is he into Legos? Is he into, whatever? If he's into playing Mario Kart, I don't know if anybody does that anymore. Know what your son is into and then learn that language. Learn how to
Mm.
be engaged with him. If he's into sports, learn more about that sport. Participate with him the best you can. So bring him into your world, but also spend time getting to know his world to where it feels like what's important to him is important to you. Okay. So that's with your son. With your daughter, how she sees you treat your wife is going to be really important. So for example, every woman I've ever been with, I've taught them to wait for me to open their door, getting in and out of a car, going in and out of the building. So my sons see me do that. My sons open the door for their mom, for their women. My daughter sees it. So I've even trained my daughter. I trained my granddaughter. Wait for me. I'll open your door for you. So I treat them like, the princess, or like I do their mother, who's the queen. And so I do those things that make them feel special. I praise the hell out of my daughters and granddaughter all the time. You're beautiful. Oh, you look great. Oh, you look gorgeous in that outfit. Oh, you look hot. Hey, que guapa. Vuelta. Quiero mirar. So just giving them all that praise and love because the feminine thrives on praise, attention, desire. It's all external validation. So praise them all the time. Treat them like they're the princess. And, it could be that, your daughter might be more masculine than your son, and that's okay as well. If your daughter enjoys doing masculine things, get involved. My stepdaughter right now is in Guadalajara for a football tournament, soccer, call it in America. And so, I'm sending her messages. How's it going? How's your games going? And, so even though that's maybe more masculine to be competitive, I'm still letting her know I'm proud of her and I'm excited for her and I
Mm,
miss her and I can't wait for her to come home. And so just a lot of love and affection to your daughter. And also take her with you places when you go somewhere. Now, one
yeah.
thing I've found with the girls, this is true for both of my stepdaughters, and not so much my granddaughter. She doesn't. She's more of a nice girl in that she doesn't want to ask for a lot of stuff. But my two stepdaughters always love it if they go somewhere with you, if you get them something. Now, for my
Hmm.
previous stepdaughter, it was always a pack of gum. She'd love to get a pack of gum when we went somewhere. Um, so the girls seem to like a gift. They want something, when you go somewhere with them. So, get them something, some little thing that they take home and they're excited and they're proud of. Might even be my my 17-year-old stepdaughter loves to go to Carl's Jr. hamburger place and get the infantile, the kids hamburger
Yeah,
and
like the
get the
kids'
toy
meal.
with it.
Yeah.
All these toys will get lined up. She's 17 and they're on our bar in the kitchen. All these different little toys from Carl's Jr. She likes to bring the toys home. So get her little gifts and treat her like the princess and tell her how beautiful she is and how wonderful she is and how beautiful. Que guapa. I assume you speak to your kids in Spanish or you're raising
Yeah.
bilingual kids, right? Yeah, that'd be the other thing.
Trilingual.
Good. Raise them as many languages as you can get into their heads while they're young. And so really to bring it all together, the healthier relationship you have with the kid's mother, the better. Both of them show them lots of love, lots of hugs, lots of love. Your son spending time with you, learning skill sets from you, spending time with men. With your daughter, telling her she's beautiful, praising her, treating her like a princess, opening the door, taking her places, holding her hand. My 17-year-old daughter, I mean, I only came into her life probably when she was about 7 or 8, right? So she wasn't a small child. First time she met me, she loved that I started like picking her up and kind of holding her up like that. And she could, do somersaults, when I held her. And so she's always liked that I've kind of done those physical things with her. And so now, even at 17, if we're going somewhere, even with her mom, or if just her and I go somewhere, she loves it when I hold her hand. Yeah, I'm thinking a 17-year-old's gonna be embarrassed by her dad or stepdad holding her hand, but she never is. So even just
Wow.
holding her hand, she just seems to love that physical connection and touch. And I think the more of that kind of healthy respect we give to our daughters, opening the door, praising them, holding their hand, giving them physical affection, they will grow up and be open to receiving that from a good man. And you mentioned, having good men out there for our daughters. One of the things I love this, I love telling this story. My granddaughter is just turned 18 back in October, and smart girl. My father is the custodial parent, and my son is her custodial parent. He's a former military athlete, got 2 degrees, a master's degree in wildlife ecology, loves the outdoors. I got pictures of my granddaughter holding snakes when she was a little girl, grinning from ear to ear. And she's played soccer, she snowboards, she runs track, and she's an honor student. And I'm thinking, this young woman is going to need a strong man to match her. She's a strong young woman, makes good grades, is athletic, um, loves the outdoors. And I've always thought, well, my mission is to raise enough strong, young, high value men, as the term often is used, to give my granddaughter a choice of men that can match her strength and still,
Mm,
lead and be bold, and she can feel provided for and protected by them, even as she is a strong young woman. And like I said, I mean, she's always really smart. At 3, she understood figure of speech, reverse psychology, metaphor. She could use reverse psychology at 3, and she knew when it
Wow.
was being used on her. At 7, I'm sitting in a hot tub with her on her birthday, and she's talking about the Big Bang and the expanding cosmos. And I go, "Do you watch Cosmos?" She goes, "Yeah." Kind of like doesn't everybody? Like, next birthday, she's talking about uh, the origin of the species and evolution and natural selection. Like, this kid just instructing me on this stuff. So anyway, on her 16th birthday 2 years ago, went to visit her. We're having lunch. And she says, "Guess what, Grandpa? The boy that's taking me to the homecoming dance, his parents are reading No More Mr. Nice Guy." And I go, "How cool is that? That the boys taking my daughters out, their parents are reading my book." So I'm thinking,
Wow.
okay, mission accomplished. I'm
Yeah.
making the world a better place for my granddaughter, for your kids, to where the girls can be strong, open young women, and the boys can be strong, confident young men, and they can bless each other's lives. So I'm I'm
Hmm.
building a better world for your kids and for my kids and my granddaughter.
As it should be. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from everything what you just mentioned is just the ability to give as much love as you can to the kids.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Gabor Mate.
I
You
do
probably
know who
seen.
he is. He's been quite a bit down to where I've been to do plant medicine, ayahuasca down in Costa
Yeah.
Rica. He's a
Yeah.
regular down there.
Yeah. So I was listening to one of his conversations, and I think they were talking about the whole concept of Mama's Boy. And until I read your book and I was listening to that conversation, I kind of made the connection as to how is it that sometimes a nice guy is born. So they were asking him, "Hey, so what do you think about the fact of creating mama's boys that they are over cuddled and they are giving like excessive amounts of love?" And something that he was explaining was he mentioned that in his book he talks that they did a study with I think it was over 1,000 women where they followed them and well like some of the women were more attentive to their kids than other ones, and after 35 years they followed those women and they followed those young men, and it turns out that the men who had received the most amount of love were the ones that were more successful, more resilient, they had more confidence. And what he mentioned was that the amount of love that is given, it has to do with the fact, or it has to do with where that love comes from. Does the love come from a place of anxiety? Does the love come from a place of insecurity from the parents? So it seems to me that if us as parents, if we are giving unasked love to the kids from a place of our own insecurity and our own anxieties, that is going to be transmitted onto the kids. So, whenever I was reading your book, I was able to make that connection. So, the overcuddling of kids that comes from an anxious place, is that also a source of nice guys?
It can be, and this is a good point. Culturally, when I came down to Mexico, as you know, Mexico, Latin America is considered a macho culture. We hear that term macho a lot. And somebody told me macho just means mama's boy. And I really came to realize that was true, that in macho culture, often the boy is disconnected from father. Dad's not around or dad's harsh and overcoddled by his mother to where the mother raised the boys where they have no accountability, no responsibility. The sisters make their bed, cook their meals, and the mothers raise the little boys to think that girls are just there to serve them. And so they grow up to be men that just use women and think that women are just there to take care of them. They don't support their partners, they don't
Mm,
support their children. That's part of macho culture because the boys were coddled and never held accountable. So that's different than being given an abundance of love. Because, like, I hug my stepson, Angel, as much as I hug my daughter, Regina. Now, I'll tell him, he looks good. I don't praise him like for his outfit like I do, my stepdaughter, but I praise him for his accomplishment. Hey, I'm proud of you for doing that. Yeah, I'm really proud of you for this. Thank you for taking care of that. Thank you for helping your mother out, right? I'll praise him a lot for his accomplishment, but I still hold him accountable for he's got to take care of himself and accomplish in life. That my expectation is, at 19, he's either going to school or he's working. He's doing something of value, and I'll help him either way. But he's got to be, focusing on that. So he's not being coddled. The expectation is he's got to grow up and be a productive young man. But he still has gotten a lot of praise and a lot of love. And I agree with that if it's not coming from an anxious place. And I'll give you an example, an illustration of that. There, there's a book I highly recommend that a lot of people nowadays don't seem to have heard of, because it's an older book, probably about 40 years old, called The Road Less Traveled by Dr. M. Scott Peck. I'm told it is the all-time best-selling self-help book. And I remember reading this years and years and years ago. And I've read it a few times, so it's been a while. But he talks in there that if parents are attentive to their children and meet their children's needs in timely and judicious ways, and I add consistent to that, the children internalize a belief that I'm lovable, my needs are important, and the world is like my family. Okay. Now, can you imagine going to kindergarten thinking, I'm lovable, my needs are important, and kindergarten's going to be just like my family? Or junior high, I'm lovable, my needs are important, and junior high, just like my family? Or when you start, talking to women and, wanting to go on dates, I'm lovable, my needs are important, and women are going to treat me just like my family. And what if we carried that as an emotional operating system into life? There isn't anything that we wouldn't be willing to try and venture out to and risk, because we know I'm lovable. My needs are important. And the world's going to conspire with me to love me and help me get my needs met, right? But if a child does not get their needs met in timely, judicious, and consistent ways, they internalize the opposite. I'm not lovable. I'm not important. My needs aren't important. And the world's going to be just like my family. And that's how a lot of us end up going to kindergarten and junior high and start interacting with the opposite sex, or go looking for a job. I'm not lovable. My needs aren't important. And I know you probably don't want to hire me, or you don't want to go out with me, or whatever. Now, there's another piece we can add to this. If a child is parentified, called up to take care of the needs of a parent, there's the word that maybe that anxious coddling might come in, where and I had this done with both of my parents. My dad kind of, I got approval because I played sports and he liked sports. My younger brother didn't. And my dad did not have a good relationship with my younger brother. My mother was raising me to be different from my father. So she taught me to be self-sufficient, to cook, to clean. I can sew on a sewing machine. I used to anyway, but I could learn again. I can do my own laundry. I pressed my own shirts the other day when I was doing a photo shoot. I can do all of that stuff. I've been able to cook since I was 12. I like those skills, but I also was my mother's little companion. I was the good boy, the good man that was there to listen to her complain about my dad, basically. So I was called up and parentified, and I got value by those things. Now, even though a child may get a sense of value by meeting a parent's needs, he will also internalize an emotional belief that I'm not good enough. I couldn't be good enough at sports to make my father proud of me 100% of the time. I couldn't be good enough to make mom not sad or not depressed or not disappointed in my father, right? I couldn't be good enough. But as a child, because we're narcissistic by nature, we believe we should be able to. And so when a child gets parentified by the adult, so in other words, when an anxious adult is using a child to meet their needs in some way, even if it's to feel like they're a good parent, right? Or to get the love they're not getting from their partner, or to get the love they didn't get from their own parents, or the parent is overindulgent because they got told no by their parents. All of that is meeting the needs of the parent, and that internalizes a not good enough belief in the child. So even while the parents may say, well, we gave them everything they wanted, if the child was parentified, used to meet a parent's needs, and probably most of us do that in some way with our kids. I know I did. Um, it's going to internalize that belief. I'm not good enough. Now, the child may not put two and two together. They may not think because my depressed, sad mom wanted me to be her good companion, but she never got over being sad and depressed and never got happy with the men in her life. I must have failed her. We don't put that two and two together, but it's internalized into our belief system that we carry out in the world. So then our beliefs may be I'm not lovable, my needs aren't important, I'm not good enough, and the world's going to be like my family. So I agree. Children need an abundance of love and attention that comes, again, in timely, judicious, and consistent ways, but they don't need mom and dad using their kids to fill the empty hole inside of them or to take care of their unmet needs. That is damaging to the child.
Absolutely. So for some of the or a parent that might be listening, what are the signs that they should take a look at into themselves to prevent that from actually happening?
The best thing I know, this is one thing that I teach pretty much anybody that comes to my workshops, is something that I call cooperative reciprocal relationships. And it's just a real simple model of identifying what are all the resources you have in your life right now as an adult to help you fill your bucket. I tell it every adult, one thing about being an adult is that responsibility comes with that responsibility for your actions and responsibilities for your wants and your needs. And it's your job to get them met. Now, we can't get all of our needs met by ourselves. If I need a root canal or a crown put on my teeth, I can't do it myself. I have to go to a dentist, right? Um, if I want physical affection, well, probably I can love myself, and it's nice when my wife strokes my arm or gives me a kiss or tells me she loves me, right? We need these resources to help fill our bucket and get our needs met. And this little exercise that I do is three parts to it. First, on page one, they identify what are all of the, I call them CRRs, cooperative reciprocal relationships. What do you have in your life now? Friends, family, associates, professionals that we have in our life, groups of people that we have in our life, practices that we have in our life that help fill our bucket up. I have people identify those because a lot of times we have friends and professionals and resources we forget to use, right? Hey, call that friend up. Go out with that buddy. Go do this. Go to the dentist twice a year. Let your accountant, do his job. All that stuff. So that's part one is where we identify what are my cooperative reciprocal relationships. Page two of this is we identify what am I missing? What do I need in my life? And before I've done these, I do these all the time because I do them pretty much every workshop. I've identified I needed a men's group, or I needed a new accountant, or I needed a financial advisor. About a year ago, I shared with a group I need a nutrition coach. I've said before I need a social media expert. And every time I put that on page two and said, here's a resource I need, it shows up. I find it. Like in the group when I shared a year ago, I need a nutrition coach. Two guys raised their hand. I know one. I know one. I hired one. Still working with her 10 months later. And I'm in the I'm carrying the weight now that I had in my 30s, and I'm almost 70. So it's been helpful. Same way when I needed an accountant, I needed a men's group, I needed a financial advisor. They showed up because I named it. So there's page two. How do we get more resources to adequately fill our bucket and get our needs met? Page three of the exercise is where you identify relationships that are no longer cooperative or reciprocal. A buddy that from college that you used to go out drinking with, and now you got kids and you don't go out drinking anymore. And yeah, he was a good friend then, but hey, maybe you don't need him anymore. Maybe it's a business partner. You need to renegotiate the arrangement. Maybe it's a parent that's been, overly involved or invasive or hasn't, been violating your boundaries. Page three is where you go have a conversation, where you renegotiate the relationship, ask for what you want more clearly, set a boundary, or just cut it out completely to open up room for more resources. So when the adults are taking full responsibility for surrounding themselves with the resources to fill their bucket, and if they have a partner, like say you and your wife, if you and your wife are actually just one of many CRRs for each other. Now, you two might be the most important that you have with each other, but hopefully you've got 30, 40, or 50 more resources. And hopefully she has 20, 30, 40 more resources, not just each other. And both of you are cooperating with each other to get your buckets filled, using each other and all these other resources. And then when your bucket is filled, there's no empty place that you have to pull your kids into. You're giving from the overflow to fill your children's bucket. And it should always go that direction, not this direction. The children aren't here to fill the parents' bucket. The parents brought them into the world. It's the parents' job to fill the child's bucket. And again, I think if we do that in an adequate way, the child internalizes the emotional belief, I'm lovable, my needs are important, and I'm good enough, and the world's going to, cooperate with me and to bring me love, to get my needs met, and for me to have success. So it
Mm,
begins with the parents again, doing a good job filling their own buckets.
right. Now, that's a good way to sort of prevent those things from happening for, for the kids. Of course, now there's cases where, adults have become nice guys. So a lot of nice guys don't realize they're carrying deep resentment. They think that they are sort of selfless, but in reality, they are carrying, they're secretly angry that they're not getting what they want or that they're not getting what they feel they deserve. How does this play out in relationships?
Oh, it it fucks them up good. It does. Again, I'm a recovering nice guy. And I remember I got out of my second marriage, and I started working on my nice guy issues during my second marriage. I wrote the book while I was married to my second wife. And I got out in the dating world and started dating some nice girls who would never tell me what they wanted, that would never, kind of say, yeah, I'd like to do that. They just go, "Oh, okay." I'd say, what do you want? It doesn't matter. Or they wouldn't tell me if they were upset at me. I started having a lot of empathy for my two ex-wives, what they went through because I was not good at expressing what I wanted, at taking responsibility for getting my needs met, for filling my bucket, for dealing with conflict head on. So those are all pieces that a nice guy has to go to work on. And one of the hardest things for nice guys is to ask for what they want. For whatever reason, when it comes to our needs and wants, we nice guys think we're bad. We're bad for having needs and wants. We shouldn't have them. We think everybody else's needs and wants are more important than ours. Or maybe when we're little kids, we thought, well, I have to meet mom and dad's needs so that they'll be okay to meet my needs. Or my brother, oh, he's got lots of needs, so I better not have any. So there's different stories for nice guys, but most nice guys, a core piece is we think we're bad or going to get in trouble for having wants and needs. And countless people, pretty much every woman I've ever been with says, Robert, you're difficult to give to. And they're right. I tend to not express what I want. I've worked at it. I tend to not let people give to me. I've had to work at that too, whether it's giving a compliment, doing something nice for me, paying me for a service. I've had to work at doing that. For example, my wife is very loving, very generous, and she grew up in poverty. And to this day, she works really hard, but I pay all her bills. I create all the income. I mean, the car needs fixed, she takes the car to get it fixed. We need a carpenter in the house, she finds the carpenter. She this today she's out at the market, buying fruits and vegetables. So she works hard. She goes to the gym for at least an hour every day. She gets up in the morning, takes our daughter to school. Now, I pay all the bills, but she says, Robert, let me give to you. Let me do nice things for you. That's how I express my love to you. And she says, if you pay all the bills, what's left for me if you don't let me do nice things for you? And I go, okay. I mean, I get that. But like, for example, if we're sitting at the table and I need a fork. I'll just get up and go get myself a fork because my dad used to, Mrs. Glover, get me a fork. That's what he would have done when I was a child. And so remember, I'm trying to not be like my dad. And my mother even told me as a boy, she was raising me to be different from my father. So I can't be selfish and demanding like dad. So I get up to get myself a fork. My wife says, where are you going? I'm going to the kitchen. And she says, how come? And I said, I need a fork. And she goes, I'll get it for you. Well, she's still sitting down. I've already gotten up. I go, I can get it myself. I've learned to say, okay, thank you, and go back and sit down and soothe my anxiety that I'm being an asshole like my father because my wife's getting up to go get me a fork when I can get up and get it myself. All right. So those are the kind of things. I mean, sounds like a little thing, but I've had to work at that. Or like if I'm taking the garbage out in the evening, all I got to do is take the bag out of the garbage can, open the gate, walk out the front door, open the gate to the street, put it, walk back in. 2 minutes. I can do it all by myself. Often, if I'm taking the garbage out, she'll go, "Do you need help?" And I always say, "No, I don't need help. I mean, I don't. I don't need her help to take the garbage out." Now I say, "Sure, come on, come give me a hand." Now, I'll still just open the gate, carry it out, open the other gate, put it on the street, come back in, close the gate, come back in, close the gate. The dog will probably go with us too. And that's I didn't need her help, but now I say, "Sure, come with me." And now I try to find ways to let her do things for me, just because that gives her a chance to, because it feels good to do things for people. And I think, who am I to rob my wife of those opportunities to get pleasure from loving me? So I've had to work at this. I've been working on this for 20 years of letting people do things for me. It still makes me feel anxious or guilty if somebody does something nice for me or gives me something, even gives me a compliment. And this is pretty common for nice guys. So I've been working for 20 years, like I said, both practicing asking for what I want, giving to myself, surrounding myself with resources, CRRs, people, professionals who want to give to me, and I'm practicing letting them. And again, I'll probably keep practicing that till the day I die. And so that's a core piece of nice guys have to work on. And probably what will come up is a real discomfort. I think for me, it's like I'll be like my dad, or I'll be like all those jerks that I've heard women complain about, and I don't want to be that bad man. So I have to be needless and wantless. But the truth is, like I said, that robs the people who want to give to me the pleasure of being able to give to me. So it's worth working on. So people listening to this, if they identify as a nice guy or a nice girl, yeah, practice asking for what you want, practice letting people give to you, practice the receiving, soothe your anxiety that somehow that makes you bad, they're going to get mad at you, you're going to owe them something, and just let people give because they like to.
Yeah. Does that sense of not wanting to receive things from other people or from, from your partner or wife or whatever it may be, does that come from some sort of shame that perhaps you like as a man, one could feel weak receiving help from somebody?
That's a good question. I
Is it a
I don't
form of
know if I know the
shame?
answer. I think it is shame mostly, and yeah, that form of weakness. I think a lot of times what I see is more like I'll be dependent, I'll owe them something, I'll be a burden to them, I'm a problem, and that has shame attached to all of those as well. Um, but you know what? I'm going to start asking some men that question. Is there difficulty in receiving because they feel that they'll be perceived as weak?
Yeah, I
That's a
mean,
good question.
the reason why I asked that is because, for example, if I think of like I've had the chance to live in different countries now, and society is very different. In Mexico, it's sort of more like a male predominant. The male is a provider. In most cases, of course, now things are changing a little bit. In the US, it's still, I think it's starting to level off a little bit. I'm not sure. But for example, here in Scandinavia, in Finland, there's a lot of, it's a pretty egalitarian society. So everybody's equal, no matter how much you make, you're equal in every single way. Like people here sort of split everything in half. If it's a couple, everything goes in half. It doesn't really matter how much you make. So the reason why I asked that is because, well, I come from a Mexican background to a certain point, and then also from an American background when I was living in the US and sort of, well, I grew up without a father. So a lot of the male figures that I looked upon was always when I was playing American football was my coaches, some of my teachers, perhaps some of my friends' parents. So sort of seeing them how they were as a as a man, those were kind of like my references of male figures, right? So then once I go back to Mexico, start working, built a career, had a pretty good job. I was sort of self-sustained. I maintained myself, sort of like you were talking about that. I had all these skills, like I could do my own laundry, I could cook for myself and do all these things. And then once my wife and I, we got married, we got pregnant, and then eventually we came to Finland. And well, while there's a process for me to get all my paperwork done, on my residence permit, I can't work. I couldn't work. So I was just sort of, it was the middle of the pandemic. Didn't have any documentation yet to work. So I was just like sitting at the house, and she was being the provider. And even though technically speaking, I couldn't do anything about that because I just had to wait for those things to get done, it did give me a bit of a sense of weakness and
Yeah.
maybe even shame that instead of me being the provider to some extent, like I was being taught because of seeing my grandfather or other male figures in the US, I was actually being provided upon. So I think there might be a lot of men out there that maybe could fall into those positions for whatever reason it might be, and they might be feeling that that shame. So is that shame also come from a nice guy syndrome?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good illustration. I'm listening because I know culturally, I can kind of speak about North America. But what's happened in North America, in the U.S., where I'm from Seattle, and I even see it here in Mexico, is that the women have been rising
Yeah.
economically for quite some time in the U.S., now here in Mexico as well. The women getting often better educated than men in the U.S. More women get college degrees than men now. Women having more career paths open to them. Used to be, if you weren't a mother, you were a school teacher or a nurse or home ec major, right? Nowadays, women have all these career paths. And I hear a lot of women express, I mean, a lot of women get almost married to their career and then wait till like they're 40 and go, okay, clock's ticking. I want to have a baby. Where's my man? And they want a man whose income and career matches theirs or above
Hmm.
theirs, right? So what's happening is that there is this really imbalance happening. And I see this in Mexican culture as well. A lot of the young women are getting educated. They get their own jobs. They can buy their own car. And the family system is changing here dramatically. As you know, one time, primarily the influence of Catholic Church, families were big and poor, right? My wife's 8 out of 10 kids. She grew up in poverty in Guadalajara. And nowadays, you don't see 8, 10, children. Uh, you know, Nowadays only about as many as you can get on a motor scooter. And I've seen 3 kids on a motor scooter with mom and dad. So that's about the size. The biggest family now that you'll see here in Mexico is 3 kids, and often it's 2 kids. And now instead of naming their kids Jose and Maria, it's Brian and Debbie.
Yeah, Brian and Kevin.
It is changing to where it's dramatic, and it's primarily changing because the women are elevating. I saw a billboard driving into Guadalajara a few years ago, and it's kind of like from a Planned Parenthood kind of thing, like they have in the U.S. And it said 50% of Mexican girls will be pregnant by the time they're 15. 15. 50% will be pregnant. Used to be, all right, that's when they started their family. Now grandma was going to raise that kid probably, while the daughter probably continued to have fun being a teenager. But maybe that started a family and it started them on a path to having, 6, 8, 10, 12 kids. But that's just dramatically changed because the women now with contraceptive, birth control, higher education, more opportunities. So there is that imbalance. So apart from your unique situation where you could not work in a foreign country for a time and COVID, I think we are seeing more of an imbalance where men thinking, I can't keep up, I can't pay equal. And I think because I've talked to some men about this, I think it really can get into a guy's head that, oh, I'm not man enough if I'm not at least matching my wife's income. And which, if you think about it, that's too bad because there's so many things that the man could be doing that brings value to the relationship and to the family. It's not just the money that we bring in. Like I said, even reversing it, I bring in all the money to my family. Every now and then, my wife will, you know, she'll get a a wild hair up her butt and think and said, I should go look for a job. And I go, why? Well, and then she'll have some reason for it. And I'll go, okay, you want to quit being able to take your daughter to school? Do you want to quit being able to go to the gym? Do you want to quit being able to go to the market? Do you want to quit being able to go to dance class 4 nights a week? Do you want to quit being able to go to salsa events, in Playa del Carmen, Mexico City, Cancun, Cozumel? Do you want to stop doing all that so you can get a job? And the job, I'd have to sit down and actually carefully do the math, but it would probably take her about 2 weeks to earn what I can earn in an hour.
Mhm.
Now, doesn't it make more sense that I work an hour and give her that 2 weeks worth basically of freedom to add the value to the family? And she adds so much value to the family. When we need anything, she gets it done. Since I married my wife 8.5 years ago, and I've been the sole provider, like I create all the income. In that 8.5 years, my living status has gone up. I bought a house and paid for it in 3 years that I did not own before I married my wife. I now have a Mercedes SUV and a Sprinter van camper up at my mother's house in Seattle. We have a little bit older Honda Pilot paid for. The Jeep Rubicon that my wife is driving right now, paid for. Um, we probably put another $1,000 into the house in improvements. I built another business. I'm in great health. We can fly first class. My wife wears Lululemon. All of that stuff has improved. I didn't have that stuff before I married her. Now, the same thing. I was working. I've just gotten more productive in my work. I've been able to create more income. She's made so many things in my life easier. She's brought value. So without her making a dime in the last 8.5 years, my standard of living has gone up significantly. So the value a person brings, man or woman, is not solely tied to money. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we get this mentality, well, we have to match each other income wise. How about we don't even try to match each other? How about we just both bring the most value we can bring to each other's lives? And my wife and I talk about how do we mutually bless each other? How do we outgift each other? How do we outlove each other? When I say outgift each other, I don't just mean material things. I mean just blessings. And on top of all those things, I have a wonderful life. I was just up visiting my mother in Seattle with my wife. We get up every morning and take our dog for a walk. Um, we can go to the beach and have dinner when we want. Because we both contribute in our own unique ways, we both have a better life than what we had before. When I met my wife, she was living in a bad part of town in a small place with no windows in it. And, she would often have to walk because she didn't have money for the bus. Now she drives, like I said, Jeep Rubicon. So our lives have gotten better, not because of how we both match each other's income, but how we both brought our own skills and ability and love to the relationship. Now, again, maybe we men are we're a little hard headed. We might keep thinking, well, if I'm not bringing in enough money, I'm not contributing. But as I said, just flip it. My wife doesn't bring in any money, but she contributes tremendously in ways that raise both of our standard of living. So it's kind of hard to do the math on it, but it's real.
Yeah, that was kind of my realization as well. I mean, I think it was just a matter of reframing it and sort of taking a look at things from a different perspective. After a while, I looked upon that moment and thought, well, actually, it was actually a good thing that happened because I got the chance to see the last stage of a pregnancy, like 100%. I got to see the birth of my daughter. I got to spend uh, countless amount of time with with a firstborn. Whereas if I was working, perhaps I would not have that opportunity.
What a
So
gift.
it, exactly. So I think it was just a matter of reframing things, try to see the positive things or try to see the silver linings, right? Uh, Something that really caught my attention in the book is the whole concept of covert contracts. So a guy thinks, right? If I just do everything right, I'll be loved and taken care of. But then, well, life goes on, or life doesn't really work that way. And then he later becomes bitter. So, why do nice guys struggle to break that pattern?
Well, I think we struggle like most patterns in life, not just nice guys, but anybody. If
Hmm?
you don't know the patterns there, how are you going to break it? It's like an alcoholic. If they don't realize they have an addiction, well, how are they going to solve that problem? Um, with me, I got a nutrition coach. I'd always kind of was pretty aware of how to eat healthy, but when I started putting stuff into an app and tracking my macros, now I became more informed, and once I got a clarity, oh, if I eat this much protein and keep my fats and carbs under this much, I get strong and lean. So okay, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And so many guys have told me they read No More Mr. Nice Guy, and they'll go like, I've had countless men said, I've read every self-help book out there. None of them spoke to me like No More Mr. Nice Guy because it finally identified why they kept repeating the same patterns, getting stuck in the same places, having the same old thing over and over and over again. Kind of like that quote we attribute to Einstein of, doing the same thing and expecting different results. But if you don't know why you're doing them, have no clarity, it's hard to break out of that. It's hard to know what to do different. So a lot of guys tell me, and I agree with this. I think that the idea of covert contracts is maybe one of the most powerful parts of No More Mr. Nice Guy. It helps me a lot. And to make it even clear, this is clearer than even I say it in the book. There's three basic covert contracts of the nice guy syndrome. Covert meaning is hidden, maybe unconscious to the nice guy. One, covert contract number one, if I'm a good guy, I'll be liked and loved and get my needs met. And the women I want to have sex with will want to have sex with me. Now, all right, what does it mean to be a good guy? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm different than dad, or I'm different than the jerks, or I'm different than whatever. That makes me a good guy. And then that should make me liked and loved. Well, no, being a good guy doesn't make people like you or love you, and not everybody's going to like you or love you, no matter how amazing of a person you are. But nice guys think if I do this, this should work out. If I'm a good guy, I should be liked and loved, and the people I want to have sex with will want to have sex with me. Second covert contract is if, they're all if then, give to get, manipulation basically. If I meet your needs without you having to ask, then you will read my mind and meet my needs without me having to ask. Now, as I'm giving to you to try and meet your needs, I really can't read your mind. I really don't know what you need. I'm maybe going to give you these gifts or wash the dishes or do this, hoping that you'll go, oh, I'm so grateful. I'm so appreciative. You're such an amazing person. I love you so much. And oh, let me meet your needs. Now, other people can't read our minds. They don't know the contracts there. And if we're not good at asking for what we want, which we've already established nice guys aren't, and if we're not good at receiving, no matter how much I give to you out of a covert contract, if I make it difficult for you to give to me because I don't receive well, you'll quit trying. So that covert contract doesn't work. Third covert contract is if I do everything right, then I'll have a smooth, problem-free life. Well, what does it mean to do everything right? I mean, all the great books, whether it's the Bible or the Quran, doesn't matter. I'll say everybody falls short. Nobody gets it perfect. But yet
Mm.
nice guys think I'm close to perfect. I'm close to getting everything right. And then therefore everything should go smooth in life. But we don't live in a smooth, problem-free world. I mean, COVID happens. People lose jobs. There's sicknesses, there's illness, there's death, there's war, there's economic downturn. We don't live in a smooth, problem-free world. So thinking just because I do everything right, and remember, I'm the scorekeeper of everything I do right, right? I just ask me, I'll tell you all the things I do right. We think I've done my share, and then when either God or women in general or the woman I like or, our parents, when they don't do the things we expect in return to give us our smooth, problem-free life, we're upset. And so often nice guys we're often out of touch with our emotions, but underneath that, there's usually a strong frustration and resentment that nice guys carry. That again comes out, like I said earlier, in passive aggressive ways, victim pukes. Because if we think we're doing our share of those three covert contracts, but nobody else is doing their share, or at least not as much as we do, we are going to be frustrated and resentful. And because we don't know any other way, we'll just do more of what we're already doing, trying to get better results. But again, that whole Einstein thing, that's the definition of crazy, doing more of the same thing, expecting different results. But that's all we know. So once a guy finds out, once I uncovered in therapy my covert contracts, I'm a nice guy, therefore, fill in the blank. I'm a nice guy. I do everything right. I'm different from my father, therefore, fill in the blank. I'm different than all those bad men, fill in the blank. But all those things I wanted the blanks filled in, whose job was that? And does that even reflect reality? Just because I'm different from my dad or different than all the jerks the women complain about, does that mean I'm going to be universally liked and loved and have, every woman out there is going to want to have sex with me? No, it doesn't work that way. And especially doesn't work that life's going to be smooth and problem free. It doesn't work that way, but nice guys believe it should. So yeah, having that wake up call and becoming aware of our covert contracts allows us to, number one, dwell in reality and get real about stuff. But number two, use overt contracts, i.e., ask for what we want. You sent me an email a while back and said, Robert, can you come on my podcast? I'm just starting a podcast, and if you came on my podcast, it'd help me get off to a great start. Okay, I said yes. It was an overt contract, and I knew it was going to take X amount of time. We'd sit down. I do a lot of these. I never know how the conversation's going to go, but the majority of the time it goes well. So I agree to do them and I enjoy them. And it helps me out because it gives me visibility and publicity about my books and my programs. And it helps the podcaster, get more subscribers and likes and all that kind of stuff. We have an overt spoken agreement with each other. We're going to help each other out. And that's how the world works more effectively. If we'll be overt about our wants, our needs, our expectations, our desires, and have a clear communication about, okay, yeah, I can do that for you. All right, yeah, I want to do this for you. And it doesn't have to be tit for tat reciprocal, but hopefully everybody involved knows what they're signing up for. And then things tend to work a lot better.
Okay, on that same note, then how can a nice guy express his needs and wants to his partner in the midst of this movement of empowering of women? Because at the same time, I mean, it could also be sort of seen from the other side that, hey, he's just trying to tell me what to do or what I should do for him.
A couple thoughts about that. One is, if I was with a partner, and I have been before, who saw my wants and needs as a burden or a demand, that's not a good partner for me. That's not a good fit. I'm thinking a good fit is two people that are both excited and joyful about the opportunity to help meet their partner's needs, not seeing it as a burden. I mean, and again, I was a marriage therapist for over 25 years. I've listened to plenty of complaints in a relationship. And a lot of people come in going, my partner's not meeting my needs. And the other one's going, I don't want to meet his needs. Well, what kind of relationship is that? Why the fuck are we even together if we're not supporting each other's wants and needs? And if you don't like your partner's wants and needs, get the fuck away from them. Why would we be married to somebody that we're disrespectful of what they want? I've never been quite this bold on a podcast before
Yeah,
and
no,
saying it like
that's
that.
good.
But think about it. Here's the deal. I get that some people can have unrealistic expectations. Like, unfortunately, a lot of men learn, their sexual expectations come from watching porn. And then they want their partner to act like a porn star. Now, is that a realistic expectation? I don't know. It could be. With my wife, it could be, because she likes she likes to be very sexually out there with me because she likes it. It gives her pleasure. Yeah, I remember I've told this before. Early on in our relationship, one time during sex, I told her in Spanish, I had very limited Spanish. I said, "Tú eres mi puta mexicana." And as soon as I said it, I thought that could be the really wrong thing to say. You know, here I am, this white guy in Mexico having sex with this, relatively poor Mexican woman saying, "You're my Mexican whore." It turned her on. And later she told me many times, she goes, "That's my favorite nickname. I love it when you call me that." Okay. So she gets joy out of being that for me. Okay. Not that I demand it or expect it, but she gets joy out of being that for me. Okay. But let me back this up to a little bit. One of the major problems I see in a lot of relationships, going back to those cooperative reciprocal relationships I talked about, filling your life up, I have found that when the two people in a relationship both have several of those CRRs, and it seems like the men actually need more. The women don't tend to need as many, but theirs tend to go deeper, right? If they've got a few friends, they tend to go deeper than the men's friends do. So the man kind of needs more of a committee to meet those basic needs. If I have 50 cooperative reciprocal relationships, good guy friends, associates, my work, my professionals that help serve me. If I've got, my bucket's going to be full. And with my wife, I'm not going to be needy with her, like, oh, be this so I can feel loved and good enough. I'm going to be full and overflowing. I'm going to have leftovers to give to her.
Okay.
And if her bucket's full, and we both really support each other living their best life. Like I said, she goes out to dance lessons often 3, 4 nights a week. At least once a weekend, she's going out to a dance social. And 3 or 4 times a year, she goes to a dance event somewhere. She goes to the gym regularly. She gets to do the things she loves doing. She fills her bucket up. So she's not an empty, needy person that I have to go fill up. I'm not an empty, needy person that she has to come fill up. So because we're both pretty full, we don't put a lot of demand on the other. There's not a lot of, oh, you're my wife, therefore you should, or you're my husband, therefore you should. We're both pretty full. And so we're kind of the icing for each other's cake, right? We we
Hmm.
we kind of help tap off that overflowing bucket that each of us have. So there's not a lot of emptiness and demand going on between us. And I found when couples are both doing a good job filling their bucket, they're both typically pretty happy with their partner because there's not so many expectations. Like, I feel so empty. You should be doing this so I don't feel so empty. And sometimes kind of men's demand around sex can be coming from that place. Oh, because I'm not getting my bucket filled on my own, I expect you to fill it by XYZ. Right, being sexual this way or whatever. And maybe the woman's going, well, because my bucket's not full, you should, you know, help around the house more, or you should spend more time listening to me talk. And their bucket's empty and it becomes kind of a demand, right? You should. I'm not a big fan of having a lot of shoulds between my wife and I. About the only shoulds we have is let's treat each other well and tell each other the truth. No lies, no secrets, nothing hidden. And from that place, we both get joy out of giving to the other. I don't know that either one of us ever feels like the other is unrealistically demanding of us because we're both filling our own bucket up, living a good life, and we're both giving by nature. We're both very generous people by nature. So we love giving to each other. I can't imagine going into a therapist's office and me saying, she doesn't give me what I want, or her saying even to me, he doesn't give me what I want. Now, do we both get a little frustrated every now and then? Yeah, we're human, but it's
Yeah,
not
of
a
course.
major complaint in our marriage. So I'm thinking in a relationship, if some person is feeling like their partner is completely not giving them what they want, look at two things. Number one, how do each one need to do a better job of getting their own bucket filled without being dependent on the other? And are they a good match? If you don't want to help meet your wife's needs, well, maybe you're not a good match. If your wife does not want to help you get your needs met, maybe you're not a good match. I'm a big fan of let's get together with people that get joy from helping us get our needs met, not resent us that we have needs. And again, I've seen that. I've done plenty of marriage counseling where there's plenty of resentments going on. And it's usually those two things. They're not doing a good job getting their own buckets filled, so they're overly needy with their partner, and or they're not a good match for each other. And they're just
Mm,
torturing each other.
yeah.
Say the guy likes to have sex 3 times a week. My wife would like to have sex 3 times a day. In some ways, we're not a good match that way because I'm a little bit older than her and I don't have the sex drive that she does. But we work around that and find ways to, make sure everybody's getting as much as possible of what they want and desire. But if a guy wants sex 3 times a week and his wife wants it maybe once a month and only then to keep him off the back, they're probably not a good match.
Mm,
They're probably going to be miserable forever. And that's not going to change. Now, not just around sex, it can be around almost anything. But if one person has a lot higher desire that can only be met by their partner, and their partner does not have a desire that matches that, now sometimes this can be temporary, like when you have kids, if we're talking about sex. But if in general they're not a good match, I think that's going to be an ongoing frustration that never goes away.
absolutely. What about those nice guys that put their partner on a pedestal? I mean, they sort of seeing
You
her
me?
as
Yeah, I do that.
yeah. So there's those nice guys that, put women on a pedestal and sort of put her like they make her seem pure and perfect, which ironically sort of kills desire in the long run. But others sort of chase women who treat them badly. Why do these patterns happen, and how can a nice guy break free from those patterns?
Okay, well, that's probably a whole nother podcast right there because that's a good
Yeah,
subject.
probably.
There's an archetype. I didn't make this up, so if somebody gets offended, if you haven't already gotten offended by me, don't get offended by this. I didn't make it up. It's called the Madonna whore syndrome, Madonna whore complex. My theory is that a lot of little boys that maybe turn into nice guys, one of the things that turns them into nice guys is trying to please their mommy and make their mother happy. Well, I think most little boys probably do want to make their mother happy. But at some point in history, the men would then come take the boys, around puberty and go initiate them into masculine. And we'd quit trying to please women and make them happy because we didn't have to anymore. We were now in the tribe of men and the women had we had what the women wanted. We didn't have to try to please them or make them happy. But what happens, I think, there's a developmental stage the little boys go through where they want to possess their mommy. They want to own their mommy. They say, I'm going to marry you, mommy. One of my certified coaches says, you never hear a little girl say to her daddy, Daddy, I'm going to marry you someday. But most little boys go through a stage where they want their mother they want to possess their mother and want their mother to love only them, to only have loved them and never love anybody else but them. And this is a stage where boys go dancing around naked, wagging their pee-pee around, trying to get mommy's approval of their pee-pee and everything about them. How old's your son?
Oh, he's going to be two in 2 months.
Okay, well, that's going to happen in the next year, about three-ish. Between 2 and 3, he'll go through that phase of being he's going to want to be with mommy all the time, want to possess his mother. And he may go through that phase a time or two before he hits adolescence. Okay, what happens? This is my theory. My theory is that as the little boy is wanting to possess his mother, and Freud talked about this, calls it the Oedipal complex, wanting to sexually possess mother. If if he has one of two fears. One is if he kind of acts overtly with his mother sexually, he might get rejected. The other fear is he might not, and mother might let him. That's actually the bigger fear. That if he doesn't know
Shit.
mom has good boundaries, he might be afraid of that. So what may happen to a little boy if he's afraid of being rejected by mom, or he's afraid of mother not having a good boundary around his sexual advance, like him flashing his wiener at her, or grabbing a boob, or grabbing her ass, or trying to breastfeed when he's been off the breast for 2 years, right? If he knows inside mom he doesn't have good boundaries, we talked about boys being parentified by their mother, that's a lack of boundaries. So what he may do is repress that natural inclination to want to possess his mother and be approved of by his mom, either afraid of rejection, afraid of mom not having boundaries. He'll repress that, basically hide his sexual drive and desire from the good woman who he wants the approval of, i.e., mom. Then he grows up and thinks that with the good women, i.e., the women you want to approve of you, you better hide your sexual agenda from them. You better hide your sexual desire because they're going to disapprove of you or think badly of you. And you take your sexual desire to what they would call the whores. The Madonna is the Mother Mary, the good virgin mother, right? The whores used to be the whores. Now it's the women in porn, the OnlyFans, the sugar baby, sugar daddy. All now we go to the what we'd call them, what the bad women, the skanky women, the women we express our sexual desire for them. And so what happens, a lot of nice guys get into a relationship with their partner, and because they're hooked on porn or because they're afraid of rejection of their partner, or they don't want their partner to think they're bad, they actually hide their sexual agenda. It goes underground. They push it somewhere else. Maybe I've had couples come in, the woman saying, my husband has no sexual desire. And he says, it's not going anywhere else. Well, yeah, he's repressed it. He's pushed
Yeah,
it down somewhere.
it's going
Okay.
somewhere else.
This goes somewhere. And what I found is, just like when I talk about being an integrated man, is that we have to be able to integrate all parts of ourselves, the dark and the light, the material, the spiritual, the part that we want the people to see and the part we don't want people to see. We got to be able to bring that together and look at all of that stuff ourselves and let the world see it. So we have to actually integrate the Madonna and whore together to where we bring our deepest, darkest, nasty, sexual desire to the woman we love, to the woman that, and if we're still trying to get her approval, we're probably going to keep hiding it. So we almost have to get to where we get past needing our woman to approve of us in any fundamental way. That same coach I mentioned that said little girls don't say they want to marry their daddies. He's got a quote that says, a man does not mature until he quits chasing the approval of a woman. And that is so
Mm.
profound to me that if we're still trying to get women to approve of us, like us, validate us, think we're good boys, we're not going to mature and grow up, and we're not going to be that fully functioning sexual male that brings all of our sexual energy, the killer, the darkness, that all of that to bring that to our partner because our partner wants all of that energy. They don't want the little boy. Oh, please approve of me. Please like me. Please like my wiener. Tell me I did good. Our women don't want that little boy. They want the full-grown man who's integrated both his dark and his light and brings it all to the woman that he deeply desires. And again, that's some pretty deep work, right? We're dealing in next level nice guy recovery stuff when we get into the Madonna horse stuff.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, when I was reading about it and I wanted to ask you about it, I had an idea of how it manifests into nice guys and what is the outcome. But I think you put it in way better terms than the way I was figuring it out in my mind. But Robert, until the man is able to stop seeking the woman's approval, he's not going to be able to advance. What is a sign that a man can see that he has essentially stopped seeking women's approval? What does that look like?
I think two or three things are going to happen. One of the things are going to look like he's probably spending a lot of time with men. Um, I think the depth of true connection for a man comes from other men, not from women. What women's love goes like that.
Yeah.
One day they love you, one day they think you're terrible. You're just like your dad. Yeah, this, that. With your guy friends, that's constant. It's strong. So one way is we have deep connection with men. A second way is that everything feminine just seems to come to us.
Mm.
If we're not seeking the approval of the feminine wants our approval because the feminine is, again, seeking external validation. The feminine wants to be approved of. When we no longer need to be approved of, we're the rock, we're the mountain, we're the target, and the feminine comes to us. Now, the feminine is women, dogs, cats, babies, money, opportunity, adventure. I'm sitting here talking, and my pit bull Nala just came in and sat down by me. So the feminine just came to me. I didn't have to go get her. We actually fumigated in the house today, so she had to be outside for a while. My wife just let her in my office because she loves being here with me. That's how I know I don't need the approval of the feminine. The feminine wants to come be with me. I don't have to chase it. The third thing I would say is that probably you'll notice you're not anxious around the feminine. You're not anxious around women. You're not anxious around money. You're not anxious around open doors of opportunity. You're not anxious being well thought of or praised. That anxiety is diminished.
Would that be translated into the concept of you're comfortable in your own skin?
That's a good way to put it. It's the way I like to put it. Yeah.
Wow. Robert, we have touched base on quite a lot of things, and I think this is sort of a never ending topic that we could delve into for hours and hours on end.
It could be. It could be.
For those nice guys out there that might be listening, what are some of the things, some practical steps that they could start working on for themselves?
I always begin with go find safe people. We didn't become nice guys in social isolation. We didn't internalize shame all by ourselves. We have to go find safe people to begin revealing ourselves, being vulnerable, letting that shame out, telling the stuff we don't want people to know about us, getting more accurate feedback that we're not bad, we're not evil, we don't have to keep trying to be good to compensate for something. We guys need the support. We need support of other men. We need community. Men have always thrived in community with other men. It's only been the last 60 years that we've spent more and more of our time around women. Prior to World War II, men pretty much hung out with men. Going back a few centuries, it was all men. Okay. So we need men. We need that community. When I was a marriage therapist, I told couples the best thing you can do for your marriage is have good same-sex friends. So that's where I would start. And that's why I build communities for men. I think we just thrive and do our best and level up to the best version of us when we have a community of other men. So go get community, get a coach, get a men's group, get a 12-step group, get a therapist, get some resource to help you level up, because I promise you, we have so much stuff in our shadows that we can't see. We don't know even what it is we need to work on until somebody who's already can see us more clearly or doing that work themselves, they can help us see it more clearly. So again, coach, therapist, men's group, some sort of community. I'd say from there, start making your needs a priority. Start consciously giving to yourself, filling your own bucket. It makes you less needy, which makes you more attractive, again, to all things feminine. So fill your own bucket up. Um, One other piece I'll throw out there is start working at getting honest. I mentioned that lie coach that I had in my head that said, tell it this way, leave that part out. Don't bring that up. Start speaking your truth. And again, that usually begins with having some safe people to practice that on. Start speaking your truth, your wants, your feelings, your desires, your expectations. Be a what you see is what you get kind of guy. So those are some pretty core pieces. And again, I just always started with go find safe people to do this work with. Don't do it by yourself.
Beautiful. That was Dr. Robert Glover, everybody. Robert, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people keep up with you?
Daniel, come on, hang out in Puerto Vallarta. You know where I live. Um,
I will.
IntegrationNation.net is my men's program. So IntegrationNation.net. My other website, drglover.com, has my workshops, my courses, my other programs. So either of those two places will be a good start.
Perfect. I'll make sure to add this in the description. So for anybody else out there that is looking to improve themselves and stop being such a nice guy, this is the place to start. Robert, thank you so much once again. Thank you.
Daniel,
Bye, everybody.